So a couple of years back, I was living with two roommates, both women, Emily and Jen, in a 3-bedroom, 3-bathroom apartment. Luxury, I know. We knew each other from work, and since we all were new to the city we were living in, we figured it would be most convenient to live with each other. I was the oldest in the apartment at 26, Emily was 23, and Jen was 21. And let me tell you, there's a huge difference between 26 and 23, and don't let anybody tell you otherwise. I'd essentially partied myself out at that point. Alcohol and I had entered into a relationship where a glass or two of wine or a nice bourbon was amenable, but anything more than that put me on my ass for the foreseeable future. Emily and Jen still partied like college freshmen, and a lot of their weekends were spent getting drunk, going out, and bringing guys back. No judgment here. I'm all for empowered women doing their thing. Most nights, I would hang with them for the first part as they pre-gamed at the apartment, and then when they went out, I'd wind down and head to bed. At 26, I was a card-carrying member of the Old Lady Society, and I wasn't ashamed at all. Some might even say that I was our chapter's president. On one particular night in January, the night played out in its typical way. They headed out to a friend's house, and the bars were around 9:30, and I snuggled up with a book and fell asleep around 11:30. Fast forward to 4 a.m., and I'm awoken by some strange noises in my room. I thought it was my hamster Tater Tot making noises in her cage, but I knew something was very wrong when I felt my duvet being pulled off of me. My boyfriend at the time was living in a different city, and he wasn't visiting this weekend, so believe me when I say I was concerned. My eyes popped open to see a pale, skinny, butt-naked ass man pulling my covers off me and attempting to get into bed next to me. Have you ever had that feeling that your stomach is falling out of your butt? Because yeah, that's what I felt. In that moment, I was utterly and totally convinced that this was my end. I would be, you-know-whatted and murdered in my own bed by a strange man, all before I was able to pay off my student loans. Sorry, Mom, here's another 15 grand you have to worry about because our government doesn't think death is a good enough reason to forgive loans. Once the initial instance of sheer terror wore off a little bit, I realized that this guy was probably a guy that Emily had brought home. Jen was dating a guy at the time who was around fairly frequently, so I knew him, and this pale stick of a man attempting to get into bed with me was not him. Gathering all of my courage and metaphorically picking my stomach out of my ass, I tapped him on the arm. I was very careful not to let my eyes or hand drift any lower because I didn't want him getting any ideas while he was intruding in my most sacred space in the apartment, and said, "No, no, no, stop." He looked at me with those eyes that tell you somebody is drunk out of their minds. You know, lights on, nobody home kind of deal, and cocked his head to one side like a confused puppy. "Who are you with?" I said, a little more forcefully. "Emily," he replied, swaying a little. "Yeah, no, this isn't her room, and I'm not Emily. He's across the living room." He looked at me for another second, and then with slurred speech, but in a tone that told me he was obviously deeply embarrassed, said, "Oh shit, I'm sorry, I'll go now." He turned on his heels and walked out of my room, closing the door very gently as he did, and his pale, bare ass practically glowing in the moonlight streaming in from my window. I bolted out of bed and locked the door behind him. I didn't need any more surprises that night. I crawled back into bed, heart pounding, and spent the next 30 minutes doing the deep breathing exercise my counselor had taught me to calm myself down enough to fall back asleep. What I think happened is that he got up to pee in the middle of the night and didn't remember where Emily's room was, so just walked into mine mistakenly. It's honestly a weird mistake since Emily's bathroom and her bedroom are literally right next to each other, but since this guy had never been in our apartment before and he was clearly drunker than a frat boy named Chet, I guess he got confused. In any case, he slipped out of the apartment before I got up that morning. Good. And when I told Emily what had happened, she practically broke down. She was so upset about what had happened. I still lock my bedroom door to this day, even though I'm living with my boyfriend, who keeps a baseball bat next to the bed just in case we have intruders. I'm glad it was a mistake, and I'm glad I wasn't harmed, but man, it was the most scared I've ever been in my entire life. I'm 20, and I genuinely liked Dana when we first met. After the roommate horror stories I'd heard from friends at other schools, I thought I'd gotten lucky. We weren't close, but we were comfortable, and at the time, that felt like enough. This whole thing started with a DM from a guy named Tyler. I didn't know any Tyler. The message said he had a really great time last night. When can we hang out again? Followed by 3 messages I won't repeat here, but made it very clear that he thought we had a specific kind of evening together. I stared at it for a solid minute, trying to figure out if this was somebody I'd met at a party and genuinely forgotten, or if he had the wrong person. I told him I think you had the wrong Casey. He sent back a screenshot immediately, like he had it ready. It was my face, my name, my university in the bio, photos pulled directly from my real Instagram. The same ones, same order, and same captions in some cases. An entire account built to look exactly like me that I had never created and never seen before. I sat on my bed and just stared at my phone for a while. I reported the account and then started actually looking at it before Instagram could take it down. 4 months of activity. Hundreds of messages sent to different people. Dates were arranged, meetups were confirmed, and conversations that went on for weeks with people who thought they were talking to me. Real me. The account knew my class schedule, knew which dining hall I used, and knew my dorm building and my room number, and what time I usually got back from my Tuesday to Thursday classes. I put my phone down and looked across the room at Dana's empty desk. I started paying attention differently after that. It sounds obvious in retrospect. It always does. But when you live with someone, you stop actually seeing them after a while. They just become part of the furniture of your daily life, and I had to consciously reset and look at Dana like she was a stranger. She knew my friend Britt's name before I introduced them. I caught it because Britt came to pick me up one afternoon, and Dana said, "Have fun with Britt," before I'd said who I was going out with. She corrected fast, said something about hearing me mention her, and I let it go because it was easier to let it go than sit with what it might mean. She knew I had a quiz on Wednesday before I mentioned it, and she knew my professor's name for a class I'd never discussed with her. Small things, individually dismissible, collectively forming a shape I didn't want to look at directly. Then I saw her phone. She left it on her desk and unlocked when she went to the bathroom, and I wasn't snooping. I genuinely just glanced over, but the photo open on her screen was taken inside our dorm room. Our room. From the angle of it and from the position, it was taken from Dana's desk, looking across at my side of the room. My bed, my desk, my stuff. And I was in it, sitting at my desk with my back to the camera, completely unaware. I looked away before she came back. I didn't sleep well that week. I set the trap up on a Thursday. Told Dana casually that I was staying at my friend Mary's place on the other side of campus Friday night, that Mary was going through some stuff and wanted company. I said it like it was nothing and went back to my phone. Dana said that was sweet of me and went back to her textbook. I told nobody else. Not Mary, not Britt, not my mom. Just Dana. Friday night, I turned the lights off at 9 and sat on my bed in the dark with my back against the wall and my phone in my hand and waited. 11 o'clock. Somebody knocked on the door. I didn't move. Knocked again and said my name. He said it was him. Said we'd been talking for weeks and said I told him to come tonight because I'd have the room to myself. I called campus security with my phone volume all the way down and typed more than I spoke and watched the door handle move once while I was on the call. He knocked 2 more times and then it went quiet and I sat there in the dark waiting. Security got there in about 8 minutes. I let them in and explained everything in the hallway while one of them went to find the guy who was still sitting on the floor outside my door waiting like I told him I was coming. Dana came back at midnight. She pushed the door open and I was sitting on my bed with the lights on and a campus security officer standing in the middle of the room. And her face did something I've never seen a human face do before, and I hope I never see again. It wasn't guilt exactly. It wasn't a surprise. It was more like a calculation happening in real time. Every expression she might have tried flickering through too fast, before she settled on confused and concerned and came inside, asking what happened. She was so fast with it. That's what got me. The recovery was immediate and practiced, and if I hadn't been watching her face in that exact first second, I would have missed the thing underneath it entirely. She stuck to confused and concerned all the way through the security report and all the way through the university investigation that followed and all the way through the one conversation I had with her before I got moved to a different room, where she sat across a table from a university official and said she had no idea what I was talking about and seemed genuinely hurt by the accusation. They found the fake account and linked to a device registered to her campus login. They found the photos on her phone and they suspended her pending a fuller investigation, and I moved out that weekend and never spoke to her again. I found out 2 things through the investigation that I was not supposed to find out, but obviously did anyway. The first was that the guy she sent to my room that night had been talking to the fake account for 6 weeks. He thought he was coming to see a girl who he had been building something with. Whatever Dana had planned for that night, whatever she'd been arranging, she'd arranged it around the fact that she believed I wouldn't be there. I don't let myself think too long about what that means. The second thing I found out was that Dana had transferred to this university at the start of the year, from a school in Tennessee where she'd spent 1 semester before leaving under circumstances the university there would not disclose. 1 semester. Then she transferred. Then she got randomly assigned to a roommate. Then 4 months later, that roommate started getting messages from strangers who thought they knew her. I don't know what happened at the school in Tennessee. I've looked and found nothing. I don't know if there was a girl there who got messages from strangers, and I don't know if there was a girl there who set up a trap and waited in the dark, or if that girl had been less lucky than me in some way. I can't let myself picture clearly. Dana is now gone from the university. That's all I know officially. I just know she transferred once before, and I have to live with not knowing why. I'm a doctor and a 32-year-old single man who spends most of his time in the hospital. The rest is spent pumping iron. That had been pretty much my life until last year, but the pandemic has been kind of an equator-shifting event for us medical professionals. I have seen many of my close associates perish. My mentor, my best friend, that motherly canteen woman whose name I didn't know till her death, but who never failed to give my tired face her brightening smile. All these wonderful people just died too soon. After 2 months of corona duty, the stress of seeing so many deaths and losing people I knew and worked with weighed me down. It began to get to my head. I began making mistakes in the sanitization protocols, which, even though small, could endanger my and my patient's safety. I told my senior and requested to be shifted to the normal patients ward till I gained my complete composure. She said the best she could do is shift me to the ER, but I will have to manage routine rounds as well. I was fine with it, because I knew we were short on doctors. It was a Friday. After completing my shift, I was just back to my apartment. I was tired and hungry, but then I was called again. Apparently there was some high-profile accident case. She was a girl of 24, the only daughter of the local mayor. She had a fractured arm and had a bad wound on the elbow which required 5 stitches. Shards of glass had pierced her shoulder deep, barely missing the jugular. It took me hours to patch her up and head home. A week went by. I kept checking her progress and she was coping well. She was very friendly, but nothing about it made me uncomfortable. I understood since COVID, protocols didn't allow visitors to stay. She yearned for somebody to talk to, but with each passing day she grew bolder. Friendliness turned to flirting, which I tried to handle with my best professional smile face and silence. Soon her infatuation became the hot topic of canteen discussions and leg pulling, and I began avoiding the canteen. It was a normal summer day and I was doing my rounds. I reached her room and, keeping my best stoic face, I began checking for vitals. She said that she was feeling pain in her shoulder. I knew glass wounds were deep, but so far they had been healing just fine. After telling her I was about to pull her gown to have a look, I barely managed to touch it and she pulled it all the way down to her belly in one tug. I froze. I kept my eyes on the wound. It appeared to be healing normally. I averted my eyes and told her so, but she insisted I have a closer look. Her hands touched me inappropriately and I decided it was best to walk out. By the time I reached the door, she said something so vulgar and inappropriate that it made me cringe with disgust. I marched out without turning back. I thought it was best I told somebody before I was accused of something I didn't do. So I told about her advances to my fellow doctor who was of my age, and his words were appalling. In the coarsest way possible, he insinuated that if he were me, he would jump at this chance, and laughed it off that I was scared of a woman. I decided it was the best I got back to COVID duty and stayed clear of trouble, and I easily got that. I did not see her and heard that she was discharged. I almost forgot about her in the rush of corona patients. A week later, she was admitted with mild COVID symptoms, and her father literally arm-twisted hospital management by holding supplies to provide her with a private ward and special care. All of a sudden, she became the most important patient. People were dying in that hospital daily. People whose organs were failing them, whose oxygen saturation was making them struggle for each breath. And we were short to just 4 doctors. The rest were either infected or quarantined by now. And here hospital's management was busy providing VIP treatment to an insolent brat. After 2 days, I had to go check on her. She had a fever. The PPE kit made it difficult for her to identify me, but as soon as I introduced myself, she had this bizarre smile on her face. She looked unstable with her messy hair and sweaty and sick look. As I reached near her, she caught my PPE suit in her hand. Her nails were digging into the polymer, nearly tearing it apart. Shocked, I tried to pull back, but she began rambling sexual stuff. Amidst her crazy, uncensored yelling, I checked what I had to and pulled out of her hold and exited the room. Later that day, I talked to the management. They took it casually because they had bigger issues at hand, like the pandemic and what harm can a sick woman do to a buffed up 6'3" guy. Hearing this, I decided that it was time I left this place for my own mental peace. I re-signed and joined another hospital in a different state. More than half of a year has passed by. I kind of feel like a quitter still. I feel frustrated. In all of this fiasco, I was asked thrice if I was gay by people to my face. If I do not want to be intimate with some woman because I don't like her or because of my professional ethics, doesn't make me gay. And harassment affects men mentally too. Maybe not on the scale women face, but we are not steel. We have feelings too. So this happened a couple of years ago. We used to live in a house in the mountains, so the only neighbor we had wasn't that close to our home. So there was literally nobody around. This happened on a Sunday. I had my daughter, she was 13, coming for the weekend, and she was sleeping upstairs. My bedroom is downstairs. I was in the living room watching TV when I decided to go outside to contemplate the stars. The thing is that I had to let my door be semi-open because there's only one handle, logically inside the house, and the other side of the door can only be opened with a key, so no handle from outside. I contemplated the stars for about 5 minutes, and then I felt like I could smell a weird smell. I went back inside. It was 3 a.m., so I decided to go back to sleep. Then I woke up at 6 a.m. I could see the sunrise, so I decided to open my window, since it was extremely hot inside, and stand up at the edge of the window from outside. Suddenly, I felt like a hand was pushing me on my back. I got pushed from my window by somebody. The thing is, there was only me and my daughter in my house, and I got pushed out of my own house by a stranger, and my daughter was still inside. Since the window was closed, I couldn't open the front door either, because I didn't have the keys. I knew that my neighbor was a locksmith, so I subsequently rushed to his house, woke him up at 6 a.m. and explained the situation to him. He took his stuff and came with me to my house. Now, I'll tell you what my daughter told me. She told me that she could hear an old man coughing and that she didn't recognize the cough, so she instantly went into the bathroom and locked the door of the bathroom. The door of her bedroom didn't have a lock, only the bathroom did, and she turned on the tap while she was calling the police. My neighbor managed to open the door. We rushed upstairs. While going upstairs, I saw that a knife was missing from my knife set in the kitchen. We went upstairs, and we saw that the door of my daughter's was opened. We turned on the lights and saw an old man with a hood holding one of my knives, waiting in front of the bathroom door. My neighbor and I beat the living heck out of him and waited until the police came. The man was arrested, and the week after that, we moved into another county. I've been waiting to share this story with you for a while, so here it goes. In 2007, when I was 12 years old, my family and I took a trip to Key Biscayne, Florida, with some of my cousins and family friends. Naturally, while at the resort, my cousins and I would all hang out at the kids club, where there were always a bunch of kids to hang out with, epic chicken fingers and ranch dressing, and fun games for us to play. There was a director of the kids club who watched us and facilitated all of the activities. His name was Dan. In retrospect, Dan was a major creep. He was around 40 years old, super tall and skinny, and was balding badly. The worst part is that sometimes he had us call him Dan the Animal Man. Side note, these sorts of memories leave me in awe of how naive and blinded to danger I was, and I'm not sure most were as a kid. If I ever met this guy now, I literally wouldn't want to get within a 5-foot radius of him, and there I was at 12 years old, thinking he rocked. Time is a wonderful thing. Anyhow, I digress. It was made clear to all of us that for unknown reasons, Dan was leaving the hotel in a week. None of this fazed me. On our last day at the hotel, I lost my cell phone. It was a bright blue chocolate cell phone, if anybody remembers those gems with the spinny wheel. I quickly told my parents I couldn't find my phone, and considering this was already the second phone I lost that year, my mom yelled at me and told me that if I didn't find it, I'd be grounded. I hurriedly ran around the hotel looking for my phone, and along my way, I went into the kids' club to see if anybody had found it. The room that was typically bustling with kids and activity was eerily quiet and empty. Dan was sitting on a couch all by himself. "Hey Dan, did you by any chance see my phone?" I asked. He responded, "Yeah, I found it and put it in the lost and found in the basement. Come with me." Thinking absolutely nothing of this, I mindlessly followed behind Dan as he led me around the back of the hotel. We walked for about 3 minutes and arrived at the foot of a stairwell going into the basement. We were standing at the back of the hotel, in a strange area, and nobody else was in sight. "It's down here?" I asked, confused. I was staring down a long flight of stairs leading to absolute darkness. The walls were made of unpainted concrete, and it looked like no more than a storage area, let alone a basement with a lost and found. Dan nodded and held the door open for me, motioning for me to head down the steps. Something in my 12-year-old self suddenly woke up. I'm not sure if it was instinct, fear, or luck, but I immediately knew I had to get the heck out of there. Before Dan could say or do anything, I blurted out, "Never mind, I think I left it with my mom," and darted away from the stairwell and back to the hotel lobby. I was so shaken up because something about that situation didn't feel right. I knew he was going to hurt me, and as a kid who wore rose-colored glasses and was overly trusting of others, this really meant something. I tried to compose myself and figured I'd investigate a bit more. I walked up to the concierge of the hotel and asked them where the lost and found was because I had lost my phone. The nice woman at the front desk told me that the lost and found was right there at their desk. She then asked me what kind of phone I lost, and after I told her it was a blue chocolate flip phone, she smiled and pulled it out of the box under her desk. "Somebody turned it in here earlier," she said and handed my phone. "Wait, you're telling me the lost and found isn't in the basement?" I stammered. "No, sweetheart. The hotel is under construction and the basement is just being rebuilt. There's no electricity down there or anything yet." This scared the absolute crap out of me, and I couldn't shake the feeling that this man was very dangerous. At the time, I was sharing a hotel room with my cousin, and she was the only person I told. Considering she was 8 at the time, I think I really freaked her out. I'm now 26, and I still think back to that moment and wonder, what if? What would have happened if I had gone down in the basement with Dan the Animal Man? It feels truly like one of the most critical junctures of my entire life, and I'm so happy I knew to get the heck out of there before it was too late. I recently contacted the hotel to inquire about a past Kid Club employee named Dan from 2007, just to see if he's still around, or on a sex offenders list, or in jail, or just anything crazy like that. I even told HR this whole story, but they still refused to give me any information about him and sounded pretty sketchy about it. I will continue to do research, and if I ever find more information, I'll make sure to give you guys an update.